Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we will learn Tosfos Dibur HaMaschal v'imchokek by Daled al Daled. Let's begin by looking at the flowchart of the Gemara so we can see what Tosfos is coming to explain. So previously in the Gemara, we presented the teaching of Rav Gidl that if a house had inside of it less than 10 tefachim, so for example, the height was 9 tefachim, a person is not allowed to carry in it more than Daled Amas. And on this we presented the teaching of Abaye, which was v'imchokek by Daled al Daled, that if a person carved out an area on the ground that's 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide, and it was a tefach deep, so it completed the height in that area to 10 tefachim, so that area of the house is a Rishus HaYachid, and in addition, a person could carry in the rest of the house as well, because we view the rest of the house as Chayrei Rishus HaYachid. So the part that we're going to focus on over here is that area where it's carved out 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim and it completes the height to 10 tefachim, that area is the Rishus HaYachid. That's the part of the Gemara that Tosfos is coming to talk about and explain. So let's see the general outline of Tosfos. Abaye said if a person carved out an area of 4 by 4 tefachim on the ground of the house, so that it's 10 tefachim high in that place, so that area becomes a Rishus HaYachid. And there's one part to Tosfos, which is Tosfos will ask a question from Sukkah where we find that the carving only works if it's within 3 tefachim of the walls. By Shabbos, even if the house is 20 amas by 20 amas, and it'll come out that the area that's carved 4 by 4 tefachim and completes to a height of 10 tefachim is very distant from the walls, still that area is a Rishus HaYachid. However, by Sukkah, where we also find the requirement that it be 10 tefachim high, if the sukkah were to be 9 tefachim high, and the person carved out an area on the ground with the depth of a tefach, it'll only be a kosher sukkah if the walls of the carved out area are less than 3 tefachim away from the walls of the sukkah. And Tosfos asks, why do we find this distinction between sukkah and Shabbos? So let's see Tosfos now in the flowchart form. So Abaye said if a person carved out an area of 4 by 4 tefachim on the ground of the house, so that it's 10 tefachim high in that place, the din is that that area becomes a Rishus HaYachid. So Tosfos presents a difficulty from the Riva, and he says, it's difficult to the Riva. Why is it different than a sukkah that's not 10 tefachim high, that we say that if he carved an area to make it 10 tefachim high, the din is as follows. If there's 3 tefachim till the walls, so if between the walls of the carved out area and the walls of the sukkah there's 3 tefachim or more, it's puzzle, the sukkah is going to be puzzle. And if it's less than 3 tefachim between the walls of the carved out area and the walls of the sukkah, it's kosher, it's going to be kosher. And the question is, and here carving helps even if it's very far from the walls. So why do we find this distinction that by sukkah we have an added requirement that the walls of the carved out area need to be less than 3 tefachim away from the walls of the house, and by Shabbos we don't find that requirement? And Tosfos presents an answer from the Riva himself, and he says, and Riva answered, sukkah is different since it's required that the walls be near the schach. What Tosfos is basically saying is that Shabbos makes sense, and the explanation is presented by Mefarshim is that by Shabbos we have the dimensions of a Rishus HaYachid. There's an area that's 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide, and over there the height is 10 tefachim high. We also have the walls, and it doesn't matter to us if the walls are at a distance. This is a Rishus HaYachid, a private area. It's cut off from the Rishus HaRabim. It has what's needed to make it a Rishus HaYachid. It's sukkah that's different, and that is that by sukkah there's a requirement that the walls be near the schach. And Tosfos continues and explains this and supports this, and he says, since we learn out that the requirement of 3 walls since we learn out the requirement of 3 walls from the words basukis, 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 the way we learn that a sukkah needs to have 3 walls is because the word basukis is written 3 times. And since we learned the requirement for the 3 walls from the word basukis, which refers to the schach, so from there we learn that the walls need to be near the schach. So it's a special din by sukkah that the walls need to be near the schach. And Tosfos moves off for a moment and supports this idea. And he says, like we say there in the Gemara in Sukkah, that if one distance is schach 3 tefachim from the walls, it's puzzle. If a person had walls that were 10 tefachim high, and he put schach on the top of the sukkah, but he distanced it from the wall 3 tefachim or more, the din is that the sukkah is puzzle since the walls need to be near the schach. So how does that influence the halacha here, that the walls of the carved out area need to be near the walls of the sukkah? So Tosfos completes the answer and explains, and this is why we require that it be less than 3 tefachim from the walls of the carved out area, need to be less than 3 tefachim from the walls of the sukkah, to connect the carved area to the walls so that they are close to the schach that's on top of the carved out area. In order that the walls, the entire wall of 10 tefachim, be next to the schach, it's necessary that we view the whole wall as connected. If the wall is more than 3 tefachim or more away, then we can't connect the 2 parts of the wall. And therefore, since the walls, the entire walls, the walls that are 10 tefachim, need to be near the schach, it's necessary to say lavud, which is that if 2 things are within 3 tefachim of one another, we view them as attached. So when it's less than 3 tefachim distant, then we can see the walls as connected, and the whole wall of 10 tefachim is within 3 tefachim, so that way it's considered attached to the schach that's on top of the carved out area, because only that schach is kosher schach. because that's a schach on an area that's 10 tefachim high. So it's for two reasons that we need it within 3 tefachim. Number one, so that the whole wall, in order to make one wall, the whole wall that has to be within 3 tefachim, is within 3 tefachim of the schach that's on top of that area. So we basically are looking to connect the wall at the bottom, the wall of the carved out area, to the rest of the wall, so that way the whole wall is within 3 tefachim of the schach that's on top of the carved out area. So both for the bottom, that the two walls should be connected, and for the top, that the wall should be next to the schach, it's necessary that it should be less than 3 tefachim near one another. So this is really the essence of Tosfos, the question and the answer. The question was, why by Sukkah do we find a different din than by Shabbos? And the explanation is that Sukkah is different since we have a requirement here that the walls be near the schach, and that's only able to be accomplished if it's less than 3 tefachim, where we can then say laved. And now Tosfos supports what he says by negating a possible question on it. And so it's going to be in a purple arrow. The words are going to be red because it's a question, but it's a question that he's negating. And that is, and even though a crooked wall is machsher sukkah up till dalet amas, we say that a deifena kuma machsheres al dalet amas, which means it's halacha l'moshe Sinai that if there was a sukkah that had walls that are 10 tefachim high. However, the problem was that on the sukkah, for the first less than dalet amas, there was pasal schach, and then after that there was kosher schach. The din is that we view it as a deifena kuma. We view it as if there's a wall that's 10 tefachim. In addition, there's another wall that's a little less than dalet amas. That's how we look at the pasal schach. And that way it's a crooked wall and it's right next to the kosher schach. So it says Tosfos, even though over there we extend it up to dalet amas, so how come here we're limiting it by 3 tefachim? Tosfos explains that this is actually addressed by the Gemara over there. The Gemara answered that this only works when there's already a good wall. Over there we have walls that are 10 tefachim high. It's all in place. However, we need to rid ourselves of a problem that there's pasal schach. So that we're able to do and view it as a deifena kuma, a crooked wall, up to dalet amas. But in order to make it a wall, it only works if it's less than 3 tefachim. In our case, we don't even have the walls set up. The walls are 9 tefachim. We're trying to accomplish that it should be extended another tefach with the area that's carved out. In order to do that, to create walls that are not even there in place, that's only possible if it's within less than 3 tefachim. So basically, here we have the entirety of Tosfos. We had the question of Tosfos, why by Sukkah is it different than it is by Shabbos. We explained that by Sukkah we have a special din that the walls need to be near the schach, because the din of the walls is learned out from the words basukes, which refers to the schach. So therefore the walls need to be near the schach. And Tosfos also negated a question on this. So he's supporting what he's saying, that even though we find elsewhere in Sukkah, by a Sukkah, that the distance is extended up to 4 amas, and here it's limited to 3 tefachim, that's because over there we already have the walls in place. We just have to rid ourselves of a problem. However, in our case, we're trying to accomplish to create walls, and for that the requirement is much more stringent.